You're listening to the My Simplified Life podcast, and this is episode number 260. Welcome to the My Simplified Life podcast, a place where you'll learn that your past and even your present don't define your future. Regardless of what stage of life you're in, I want you to feel inspired and encouraged to pursue your dreams, simplify your life, and start taking action. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac, author of How to Get On Podcasts, the podcast matchmaker, and CEO and founder of the MLG Collective. I'm excited to share the stories and life lessons of changemakers and authors with you while taking you on my own journey. This is My Simplified Life. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac, and today we are getting into the holiday spirit. I am interviewing Hannah Mary McKinnon, who is also known as Holly Cassidy. She's got two names because she writes in two genres. I just finished reading her latest novel, The Christmas Countdown, which is set around Christmas time, and it has all kinds of Swiss components, which excited me to no end. I loved it. So Hannah Mary and I are talking all about her newest romantic comedy. And we're also talking about how she can write in two different genres and two books a year. So get ready to get to know Hannah Mary, aka Holly Cassidy, and discover your next Christmas romantic comedy. Hi, Hannah Mary.
Hello, how are you, Michelle?
I am so excited to talk to you. I feel like I say that quite a bit as I start, an interview, but I loved reading your book. You kept me nice and cozy last
Oh,
weekend.
oh, thank you.
And
Makes me very happy.
I'm so excited to talk to you. Can you introduce yourself to everyone, please?
Yes, of course. So I have two names. My real name is Hannah Mary McKinnon, and under that name I write thrillers. But as Holly Cassidy, I write romantic comedies, holiday romantic comedies specifically. So I live in Canada now, but you could probably tell that I'm not originally from Canada. I was born in the UK and I grew up in Switzerland, and I've been writing for over a decade now, since a little bit after we came to Canada in 2010.
I love it. I love that you're doing two different genres and two different names. That makes it very interesting. Like you can be a different person as you write the different genre.
Yes, I guess so. I mean, Holly Cassidy books are romantic comedies. There's always a happy ending. You're going to get a happy ending with a Holly Cassidy book, whereas with a Hannah Mary McKinnon one, well, the happy ending might not be for the character you would expect. So, maybe the villain wins sometimes. That has happened in the past. So yes, I get to be very devious and crafty. Also funny in my thrillers. There's also some humor in there. But with the Holly Cassidy ones, yes, they're just, gentle, warm hugs, like a hot cup of cocoa.
Oh, I love it. The Christmas Countdown it's my first Holly Cassidy read. I loved it. You have me hooked. And I'm a big Hallmark movie fan around Christmas time. And it had that component to it, but it was better because I always feel my 8-year-old and I love to watch the Hallmark Christmas movies. And we always know that as they're about to kiss, someone will come through the door and they won't kiss. And you know that they're going to end up together at the end, but not having read a Holly Cassidy book, I didn't know what would happen at the end. So I was still kind of like, oh, come on.
I kept you in suspense a little bit then. No, that's good.
You did. Yes. There was only one part that I'm like, oh, I know what's going to happen. And it was with Joe. And we'll just leave that because we don't want anybody no spoilers, but
No spoilers.
I was like, oh, Joe, I know what's going to happen with that one.
That's funny.
Yes. I loved it. I thoroughly enjoyed the book. And I want to talk about Switzerland and how you brought the Swiss component in, because as I shared with you before we started recording, that my mom is born and raised in Switzerland. So I'm half Swiss. So as you named off cookies, I was like, yes, I know these cookies. And I even turned to my kids. I'm like, do you want to make Swiss cookies for Christmas?
Oh, that's so fun.
So share your background with Switzerland and how you brought that into this book, because I loved that.
Sure. So I was born in the UK, but when my dad, I'll start even a bit further back. My dad is half Swiss. He was born in Switzerland, a Swiss dad, a British mum. But when he was 4, they moved to the UK, and he didn't move back to Switzerland until he was, about 30. After he'd met my mum, who was English, and after they'd had my sister and me. So when I was 1, we all moved to Switzerland and stayed there for the first time for 7 years. And then we moved back to the UK when I was 8 for 3 years. And then we moved back to Switzerland again when I was 11. 11. So same place in Interlaken. So that's really where I grew up. And after that, after I graduated school, I moved to Geneva, where I lived and studied for 5 years. Then I moved to Neuchâtel and was in that area for another 20 or so. So I actually lived in Switzerland for 35 years. So it's really odd because I sound really English, and I am in many, 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 many ways, especially my sense of humour is generally pretty dry and pretty dark, gallows humour and stuff. But I'm always punctual, like a Swiss train, so it's quite a funny combination. So when I was crafting the Christmas countdown, I decided to make Callie, the protagonist, half Swiss. I thought it would be kind of funny to include some of my heritage, because the book is set in the fictional town of Fallbrook and also Pineville, which is in Virginia, but predominantly Fallbrook, which is upstate New York. And I thought, well, I'll make Callie Swiss and bring some Swissness into the book. So traditions and food and whatnot. And I put a little bit in, and when my editors at Putnam Penguin Random House read the first draft, they asked if I could add more Swiss stuff because they thought it was really cool and different. And so I was really, really pleased to be able to add more than just a sprinkling. There's far more in there. So that was really fun. And that's how that came about. It was just suddenly deciding that I was going to make Callie half Swiss. In the book, her father is Swiss, like mine. So that's how I ended up bringing in some of my background and heritage.
I love that. I love that it brought us even closer together. So way to go, Putnam Penguin.
Right? Full marks.
Are you the older sister or the younger sister?
No, I'm the younger one. My sister's 2 years older.
So you are Callie.
Well, I guess there are some similarities. I am a trained accountant. That was my first degree was in finance, economics, and whatnot. So that I have done accounting as well. I do the accounting for my husband's electrical company, so I know how all that works. Actually, one reader said, "You seem to know an awful lot about accounting." Well, yeah, occupational hazard. So that's very similar. And then Callie, poor Callie, gets dumped or has been dumped 7 months before the story starts. By her high school sweetheart. They were together for a decade, and after moving to this different city where her sister lives, a month afterwards, her now ex-boyfriend tells her that he is not in love with her anymore. And that happened to me. So when I was in my early 20s, so younger than Callie, I moved cities with my then boyfriend, and about 3 months later, he said he didn't think he was in love with me anymore, and the whole bottom of my world fell out. And it was fine. It was actually a really good thing in the end, but at the time it didn't feel very nice. So I could really relate to what Callie went through when that happened, because it really came out of the blue. She wasn't expecting it at all. So yeah, there are a couple of similarities, but the sister part, my sister's not a roller coaster designer. She works in healthcare. Of course there are some similarities, but it is my job to make up characters. So I don't typically feed in as much of myself or any other people, that I did in particular with Callie. It's a sprinkling of me, but it's my job to make characters up and make up their backgrounds and their quirks and stuff. So, although I do love a pun like Callie does.
Oh, the puns were phenomenal.
They made me laugh.
All through the whole book. Yes, I loved it.
Great.
It was you're very clever. You made them all up. You're very clever.
Well, I might have Googled a few and borrowed a couple and changed them around a little bit, and that kind of stuff. But I do love a dad joke or a mum joke or just a joke. Really, I'm easy to amuse.
I love this. How do you take me to how do you wear these two different hats of writing a thriller versus a romantic holiday comedy? Because those are two very different things. And are
Yes.
you writing them at the same time, or do you get in a mood where you wake up one day and you're like, I'm going to kill someone versus I feel like hot chocolate and, biscuits.
No, so I'm never, my projects overlap, definitely, but they are never at the same stage. So I might be um, plotting a romantic comedy while I'm waiting for the edits of a thriller to come in. Or I might be reading through the final pass of a romantic comedy while I'm writing the first draft of a thriller. So I have never, and I don't think I would ever, plot a thriller and a romantic comedy at the same time, or write the first draft at the same time, or do them concurrently, because um, my brain just doesn't. That's too taxing. It's too much.
Yeah.
It's very different if I'm editing, say, through the initial editing stages of one project and then doing the final pass on another one, because the final pass is a read through. It's done and dusted within, say, 3 days maximum. So it's just a different. I'm looking for different things when I'm editing or when I'm reading the final pass. So they never bleed into each other, and I think that would be the risk. Somehow where it's just I think one at a time, when it's really heavily creative, the plotting, the initial drafting, or even the second or third read through. I like to have time just to focus on that. So it's quite rare that I would say spend the morning on a thriller and the afternoon on a romantic comedy, but I can be promoting a thriller and writing a romantic comedy, and vice versa. So there's
Mhm.
always overlap.
Which came first?
So my very, very first book, also written as Hannah Mary McKinnon, was a romantic comedy called Time After Time. And I wrote that a decade ago. And it's basically the love child of the movies Sliding Doors and Groundhog Day. So Sliding Doors is with Gwyneth Paltrow, Groundhog Day with Bill Murray. So it's kind of a love letter to those two movies. And I wrote that one simply because the idea popped into my head, and I hadn't really been thinking about writing a book. I vaguely had an idea that maybe I would at some point, and the idea popped into my head and I just ran with it. But then after I'd finished that one and I was starting to work on what became my first suspense novel called The Neighbours, I realized that things were not going to work out for everybody in the end. This was a different book. It was more, it was darker, and a happy ending wasn't guaranteed for the main characters. So it felt different. It didn't feel like a rom-com. But because at that point, Time After Time hadn't sold, I didn't really think about whether I could or couldn't switch genres. I just did. And then Time After Time sold, and then The Neighbours sold, and Time After Time went to HarperCollins UK, whereas The Neighbours and all of my subsequent thrillers went to HarperCollins US and Canada, and they didn't mind that my first book was a romantic comedy. Also, because it was published in the UK, it wasn't actually published over here. It's ebook, so of course you can get your hands on it, but they didn't mind. So the suspense novel, The Neighbours, really was my debut thriller, and that was fine with them.
I find it so fascinating that they both kind of came to life at the same time, being sold about the same time. And to me, that's like a dream where you can go back and forth and do a little bit of what you want versus,
Oh,
some writers are
yeah.
like, got to do the one, or, you might hear that you have to stay in that
Stay in
one
your lane.
genre. Yeah.
Yeah,
Stay in your
yeah.
lane and stick with it because what if people then don't want to buy one or the other? But you're being successful in both.
Yes, I mean so they didn't. So I think let me see. Time After Time sold in late 2015, and it published really quickly. I think it was in June 2016, which is really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went out on submission with the neighbours, and that took a little while to sell. And that one published in 2018. So I was working on, polishing up the neighbours as Time After Time came out, and it didn't really, because I was so far into the manuscript, and I knew that after the neighbours, that was the lane I wanted to be in. I knew I wanted to write more suspenseful stories. I didn't really question it. I guess I was a little bit naive. I thought, well, if somebody likes it, if it's good enough, it will sell, I hope. And then I just crossed my fingers. And it all worked out in the end.
Sometimes it's better not to know.
Yes, sometimes it's better. Yes, because the writing industry, or certainly the publishing side, can be a little bit daunting. So I went in, just thinking, well, I'll just figure it out and we'll see what happens. Nervous too, of course, and it did work out in the end. You have to be tenacious, that's for sure.
Yes. And how many books are you writing? Are you doing one a year? Are you doing two a year, one in each genre? How quickly are you cranking these all out?
Well, I have done, typically ever since The Neighbours, I've done one a year. And then this year I've had a rom-com and a thriller published. And last year I had a thriller and a rom-com published. And two books a year is a really fast clip. And I think if this was 1985 and all I needed to do was write the books and the publishers did all of the everything else, because there is no social media, there's no real way for me, other than touring, I suppose, in 1985, there's no real other way for me to promote them, then two a year would probably be manageable. But there is an expectation, and rightly so, that you will help promote the book. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on aside from just writing the books, and that includes creating graphics and sharing graphics and writing copy for those posts, and maintaining your social media and engagement with readers, all of which I enjoy, but it does eat into the writing time. So
Sure.
I know there are authors who do multiple years where they do 2 or 3 or even 4 books a year, and I maybe they sub out all this other stuff. I don't know, but it's I found 2 very challenging because I still have 3 sons. They're university age, but they're living at home and commuting in. As I mentioned, I do the accounting for my husband's company too, and there's just only so much you can fit into a day.
Yes, I fully understand that. You're speaking my language. It's a lot.
Yes.
How has it been going from numbers, even though you're still doing accounting, but to go from numbers to writing and being creative and then promoting all of these things? It's also very different. So what has that been like for you?
It's very, very different. I mean, before, when we were in Switzerland, I ran an IT recruitment company. I was the CEO of a pan-European recruitment company. And then coming here, I started my own business, and that didn't work out. And then I had a choice to make, and I decided I wanted to try something else. And that's when I turned to writing. So up until that point, I think I would have easily said that I don't have a creative bone in my body, because I can't draw, I cannot sing, I can't play an instrument. I'm starting to learn how to play the drums after I wrote Only One Survives, which is about the rise and demise of the all-female pop rock group called the Bittersweet, and it's told from the drummer's point of view, Vienna. And I was researching drummers, and it looked so cool and so much fun that I got myself a second-hand electronic kit, and I'm starting to learn. And I suck, but that's fine. It doesn't matter. I don't really care.
My 9-year-old is learning right now.
Oh,
we're only on a drum pad. So maybe you can learn it. We can meet up and you can jam together.
There you go. That sounds, I'm sure he'll be way better than me in no time, or probably already is. So it was really interesting. And I didn't, when I was first published, of course, Facebook was around, Instagram was around, but the whole Bookstagram thing, TikTok wasn't around. Not that I'm on TikTok much. I'm a little bit old, and I'm not going to dance for anyone ever. So yeah, I mean, the side of doing the graphics and stuff, it was a learning curve. I got Canva and started to figure that out. And then on Instagram, okay, how does this work? And of course, there are new things, new features that come up all the time. So you're constantly learning new things and evolving, which I love. That was something I used to do in my corporate job. So it's been on the writing side so interesting to think that that I have it somewhere in me to make up these characters and make up these journeys and make up these places and make up these stories and write these words and edit them and then send it to my editor, and we work on it together, and it turns into a book, which has been really, really fun. And I love the fact that I write standalone, so all of my books can be read in any order. It doesn't matter. They're all separately self-contained stories. And I've written 10 books, well, 11 actually, because the one for next year the thriller for next year is done. So it's really quite funny, because like I said, if you'd said to me a decade ago, just when we first came to Canada, are you a creative person? I would have smiled and said, no, absolutely not. I'm a corporate person. That's what I do. I run businesses. That's what I'm good at. Turns out you can, teach an old dog new tricks, apparently.
I love this. This is amazing. It's so inspiring for people who are listening, that if this is something that maybe you don't even know you want to try it, you should just put pen to paper and start trying.
Yeah.
And you might be 11 books in later on.
Yeah, that's right. I used to love creative writing in school, but it had been, that was when I was a tween, maybe a teen. And then the creative part kind of fell away, and it's more essay based and stuff, which is fact based. So not creative writing per se. And I hadn't written really creatively for decades. But I always loved reading. I never thought I would be a writer, but here we are, and it makes me smile when I hear people say, "Oh, I'm in my 30s. I haven't published anything. It's too late." No, it isn't. I was 45 when my first book published. So
I was 42.
There you go. There you go. Right?
Yeah. You never, and I'm like, there could be so many more. We have
Yes.
a long life ahead of us still.
That's right.
So
exactly.
I want to ask you, since you've lived in all of these amazing places, what has been your favorite?
My favorite place to live?
Yes.
Oh gosh, well, it has to be Switzerland. It has to be. We went to Geneva in 2023 as a family. We went over to Switzerland to visit family. My dad is still there, my sister and our nephews. And we popped over, and we went down to Geneva. The five of us have 3 sons, and so we popped down there. And it was so funny because I hadn't been for a long time, but I still remembered in the old town, the little passageways and stuff, and exactly where we were. And I knew exactly where I used to live, and it's still exactly the same because it's an old building. And I love Geneva. I think I could easily, money depending, because it's not cheap, live in the Geneva area. I love that area between Geneva and Lausanne somewhere. That would be lovely. Yeah. Oh, Zurich, Zug, that would be good too. The Swiss German side, I speak French and Swiss German, so you can plot me pretty well anywhere, and I'd be happy.
I've only been to Zurich, but and we went to, my uncle had a place in Arosa.
Oh, yes,
So
nice.
Yes. So it was very nice. And all I remember is making daisy chain crowns and, skipping along through the mountains.
Yes.
And then we'd have French fries for lunch, and life was always good.
Life was good. Although I'll tell you what, I was in Whistler for the Whistler Writers Festival at the end of October. And I had been to Whistler before a long time ago, but I loved it. It is so beautiful. BC is it's just lovely. And you've got the ocean, you've got the mountains, you've got both. So that would certainly be on my list too. I mean, that wouldn't be, except the only thing that makes me hesitant about BC is there are bears. And I have a
Oh,
bit of a phobia of bears and sharks. And I'm pretty sure if I'm walking through the woods, I will not encounter a shark, but I might encounter a bear. And that
I
freaks
have
me out.
encountered one.
Oh boy, what happened?
Yes, we were camping in Sequoia National Forest, and there was one right at our bear box. There's a reason you have to put your food in bear boxes when you're
Oh,
camping. And
jeez.
she was right there. Her name was Lucy. Apparently, she was well known among the rangers.
Oh, wow.
And we just banged on pots and pans, and off she went. But yeah, no,
I would
thank
have
you.
been packing up my stuff and leaving.
Yeah,
Because apparently they don't need you to be dead to eat you.
no, no, no. You're supposed to play dead, so
No, 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 thank you.
yeah, I'm good with not having that experience again.
Yes, I would
Luckily,
imagine.
I was already a couple glasses of wine in. Uh,
Oh,
I'm not sure how fast I would have run anyway,
no.
but
Yeah. As long as you're
yeah.
faster than the one behind you, you're all right.
Right.
There's that gallows humor again.
I love it. I love it. I enjoyed Christmas Countdown so much.
Thank you.
And I told you that we do an advent calendar too. And it's funny because growing up, similar, I think, to what was in the book where the girls got to undo, candy. Ours was all candy related. And with my kids and with my stepkids, I was like, no, it's not going to be all candy because I don't need you sugared up for 25 days
That's right. Yep.
as we're gearing up for Christmas. No. And so it's a house that has, magnetic doors, and inside we put something. Sometimes you get a treat, but otherwise it's, pictures with Santa, or going to
Oh,
go see the Christmas lights and unwrap a book or watch a movie or a Christmas dance
yes.
party. So it felt very nostalgic to read
Oh,
this
I love that. That's
and to
so
know that now I've
nice.
got more ideas. Like I said, my kids are not happy about tasks, but they don't understand.
Well, I have one actually. Let me see. Here's one. Here's one of the calendars. I did an event, and actually I'm doing multiple events, so I'm taking this. So this would be an example of the countdown calendar that Callie's mum would have made for them. So here we go. They're all on a string. They've got you 24 bags,
That's
and they're all
fantastic.
numbered. There we go. They're all numbered with a little sticker. And this is really based on what I used to do for the kids. For my three when they were younger. They'd have one of those. It was hung up on the banister with treats from Halloween that I would just siphon off because there was always so
Smart.
much loot. So I used to steal 24 pieces for each of them and pop them in the bags with these task and treat notes, and they used to love them. Although I asked our eldest the other day, I said, do you remember the calendars that I used to make for you? And he said, no.
No,
And then I
don't tell
reminded
me
him, and he
that.
said, "Oh, yeah." But he needed his memory needed a bit of a nudge.
Oh, they better remember because it is a lot of work,
It sure is.
especially when you're planning out the way that Callie's sister planned everything out with each day and making appointments. I do the same thing of already. I've
Oh,
purchased tickets we have a Fantasy of Lights, and there's only 2 nights that you can walk through it instead of drive through. So you have to buy those tickets over a month in advance.
wow.
I already bought our pre-built gingerbread houses, and I'm like, I need to put this all on the calendar. It's a whole thing.
Yes,
So if they
gosh.
forget this, I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Take photos.
Yes. Oh, I love this. Hannah Mary, where can we find you? Where can we keep up with what's coming up more with Hannah Mary and with Holly Cassidy? Because I
So
want to know both, all the details.
all right. So there are two websites, although there are links to either to the other one from each. So for the thrillers, it's hannahmarymckinnon.com. For Holly Cassidy, it's hollycassidyauthor.com. And on social media, I maintain Hannah Mary McKinnon on Instagram and Threads and Facebook. There is, I'm not sure on Threads if there's a Holly Cassidy author, but I just say I have posts on Instagram with Holly Cass author saying go to Hannah Mary McKinnon. because maintaining six social or two social sets was a bit too much. So yeah, so I post just on the main ones. Hannah Mary McKinnon. You'll find me on there.
I'm so glad that we connected on Threads and that you gave me an early Christmas gift with this book. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for having me on. It was meant to be. Obviously, we have so much in common.
We're probably cousins.
Probably.
As you are getting cozy by the fire, maybe you have the Christmas tree up, go get yourself the Christmas countdown, because I promise you it's going to get you in the festive mood. You are going to want to go bake some amazing Swiss cookies. And who doesn't love a rom-com this time of year? I'm so excited that I got to meet Hannah Mary, and I want to dig into her thrillers after this kind of rom-com season has passed. Be sure to check out both her thrillers by Hannah Mary McKinnon and her rom-coms under the name Holly Cassidy.